Usually I talk about railroads or transportation, but there's another topic that I like to talk about. That's the French and Indian War. And so I've tailored it to how it affected the Ohio country and the area in which we live now. So not a lot about battles and wars and that sort of stuff, more about migration and legal issues and who ended up with what and how it kind of got started. So the French and Indian War was really a part of the First World War between basically France and Great Britain. It took place in India, the Caribbean, North America, and Europe. So this was a small part of what was going on around the world at the time, back in the mid 18th century. So basically, two competing European empires were invested in North America. That would be the French and the English. So on this map in blue, the French were here basically to trade fur with native people and take them back to Europe. So they were a trading culture here in North America, and they claimed the bulk of what we consider to be the North American continent at the time. They originated in Quebec City. They sailed down the St. Lawrence River. Where it necks, where it comes to a place at the Ile d'Orléans, which is an island in the middle of the St. Lawrence Seaway. They founded Quebec, which is the oldest European settlement continuously inhabited in a North American continent. If you've never been there, I highly suggest you go. It is a gorgeous place. The food is awesome. Scenery is great. I highly recommend going. So they basically created from Quebec through exploration, through the Ohio Valley, all the way down to New Orleans and the lower Mississippi River Valley. They claimed all of that for the King of France. At the time of the beginning of the French and Indian War, French settlement totaled only 70,000 persons in that whole area, the bulk of which were in present-day Quebec, so between Montreal and Quebec City. English had inhabited the coastal regions, and they had a lot more people. They had about 1.5 million folks had settled there, and there was a big push by them. They wanted to go west. So the people that were living there wanted to go west. I talked about that a lot the last time, about using the Ohio River and everything to settle. It was the largest in-continent migration at the time after the Revolutionary War, where they wanted to move inland. And I'll talk about that in a minute. And the Spanish were basically Mexico and Florida back in that time frame. Britain did have a few extra things that they'd gotten in a treaty called the Treaty of Utrecht. So Hudson's Bay, they surrounded that, and Newfoundland, and around Halifax, Nova Scotia. So that's kind of the setting of when this all started. So why did this area of the world really matter? Well, it's a gateway between east, so in this case, east is the Atlantic coast, and west, which is where we are now. It was drained by rivers, easily used as transportation, lots of hunting grounds, and the beaver trade was quite good. So whoever controlled the river systems really kind of controlled that part of the world. So in terms of competing land claims, France claimed all of that under a 1682 Mississippi journey that LaSalle took. English claimed it via a lot of royal charters, one of which was Virginia, and they were basically written that their charter existed from the Atlantic all the way to the Pacific. So if you consider a big long line all the way to the other side of the continent. So they were like, oh, we could just keep going on that. And that bumped into French claims. But there were people that are already living in the area, so native tribes. The Iroquois Confederacy, mainly centered in New York State, they controlled a lot of the tribes that were here via conquest, and then there were tribes that were actually living here. Delaware, Shawnee, Mingo, to name a few. Those are kind of the players in the area when it started. Just a few of the other nations that were living in the general area here. Delaware, they got pushed out by the British to this area. Shawnee, Mingo, Wyandotte, Ottawa, and Miami. Almost all of these tribes wanted to trade with France because France really, because of the lack of people, they weren't encroaching on their hunting grounds and their fur trade, and they just continued. They really liked the fur trade. France gave them stuff. They gave the French fur. Life was pretty good for them. British, not so much. So the French strategy was basically to control the trade. They started a line of forts, basically starting in Montreal down into the Ohio River Valley. And I've listed off some of them here. Fort Frontenac, that's over on Lake Ontario. Niagara is the Niagara River, which is between Lake Erie and Lake Ontario. Niagara Falls goes over that. Presque Isle is in present-day Erie. And then there are a few others. The key one being Fort Duquesne, which is now where Pittsburgh is. That's going to be a key site of the control of the Ohio River Valley. So the Monongahela, the Allegheny, come together, form the Ohio River. It's a very strategic point in North America. France got the better of the English for many years at the beginning of this struggle. For about 5 years, they sort of controlled the battle. They were very good at defensive strategy, and they gave the British a very hard time. So the governor of Virginia sent a guy named George Washington, who was 21 years old at the time, to go basically tell the French at Fort Duquesne to really leave, get out. This is going to be ours. And that mission did not go well. In fact, it's the only time he surrendered any military battle or campaign in his life. And so they packed up eventually, and they went back to Virginia. Several years later, a guy named Braddock tried it again. You guys can read the slide. But needless to say, he took a few people up there. It didn't work out, and he went back. So General Braddock, he was sent up there, got a big force, over 2,000 men. He ran up against 900 French combatants and native participants, and he basically lost. So this was one of the first instances of what I think we would today call guerrilla warfare. So the English were marching in straight lines down a narrow road. The French and their allies were in the woods, basically just picking them off at random. It was a rout. Braddock died, and once again ended in defeat for the British. Similar things were happening all over northern New England at the time as well. So once again, Fort Duquesne, which is at the forks of the Ohio, that was the hub of the French operations in this country. They really relied a lot on their native allies to assist them. And there was a lot of raiding by natives back in toward the Atlantic provinces that were controlled by the British. Basically, the natives tribes in this area sided with France at the beginning of this worldwide conflagration. But at some point, the British did get organized. So in 1757, William Pitt was appointed Secretary of State, became the Prime Minister of Great Britain, and he decided that he really wanted to win this worldwide war. And he put a lot of resources into it, treasure, men. He hired Prussians in Europe to fight the battles on the continent, and he invested a lot of time, energy, money, and manpower here in North America to essentially drive the French out. And he was, at the end of the day, he was successful in doing so. Here's a list of all the things that were going on in North America. Here we call it the French and Indian War. In Europe, Prussia was battling Austria, France, and Russia. English and Prussians were on the same side. In India, the British and French were battling over there. West Africa, basically part of the slave trade, the British were battling the French there, in the Caribbean and in the Philippines. So it was one of the first world wars, if you will, between major combatants. Several things started to happen in 1757. So the Louisbourg, which is a fort out in the middle of the St. Lawrence Seaway, was captured by the British. Fort Frontenac, which is upstate New York, was also taken over by the British. Eventually, they drove the French from Fort Duquesne at Pitt in Pittsburgh, present day, in 1758. Pittsburgh, as you might have gathered, is named after William Pitt. A major battle occurred right here in 1759 on the Plains of Abraham. The French had been very successful at running defensive wars. And for some reason, on this night, the French came out of their fort system to do battle with the English, and they lost. And it really precipitated the end of the whole thing at that point. The British general died. The French general died. Next year, Montreal surrenders. In 1763, they conclude the Treaty of Paris, and France basically cedes everything in North America to the British, save 2 islands in the middle of the St. Lawrence Seaway. This area basically changed hands then around 1758. The British, in some treaty called the Treaty of Easton, promised the natives living in the area that they would not settle their lands. They lied. And it kind of caused the French to have to redo their strategy, but nevertheless, it seemed to work. So this basically became an English territory then in 1758. So what happened in this treaty of 1763? France cedes all territory east of the Mississippi River. Canada is now fully British. New France ceases to exist. Spain gets Louisiana west of the Mississippi. Florida is given from the Spanish to the British, and France retains a couple of islands in the middle of the St. Lawrence Seaway and Guadalupe in the Caribbean. The native nations were ignored entirely in this treaty. No consultation, and their lands were traded like property. What happened after all this? So this led to a lot of uprisings from native constituent tribes in the general area that led almost for 40 years from that point of the Treaty of 1763 till almost when Ohio became a state in 1803. There was a lot of conflict with native tribes and formerly British subjects who are now American due to the Revolutionary War. And it just happened. It went on for a very long time. Many people would say that the Treaty of 1763 led directly to the American Revolution. It may be a bit of a stretch, but there is probably some truth in it. Because of the fact that Britain spent so much time and treasure from their treasury on this, that's when all those stamp acts started occurring in the American colonies, of which we rebelled against. So the Stamp Act, the Tea Act, all that stuff, dumping tea in Boston Harbor, were basically ways that the British were trying to raise money from the colonies to pay for that war that they had just won. And they had also made a proclamation line of 1763 that said that settlers along the Atlantic coast could not cross that line and come into the Ohio country. Settlers resisted that because the whole reason they were fighting with the British was for the opportunity to go into the Ohio country. So they were very upset about that as well. So a lot of people are upset after the end of the war, and conflict continued on, but mainly between colonies and the British government in London. So I talked about a little bit this 1763. West of this line, I don't have a map of it, but essentially it's basically follow the Ohio River. That was reserved for Native nations. East of the line is where the British settlement already occurred, and the colonists were very, very unhappy about this, extremely unhappy. So what happened? So the alliance they had with the French were completely shattered. This is the beginning of, we know a lot about the natives were infected with smallpox. This basically occurred, the British gave basically knew that they were giving them contaminated blankets, especially up in Fort Pitt in Pittsburgh, and it really decimated the population terribly. We just listed a few of the things that happened since 1763. The Revolutionary War did actually happen during that time frame. I don't want to discount that, but in this particular area, here are the major things that actually did occur. Most of the conflict in the area was concluded by 1795 when the Treaty of Greenville was signed. And that led to a pretty unique situation to the present day here in Mercer County, which I'll get to. Um, the war debt, 140 million pounds. That's a lot of money back then. And they wanted us to help pay for it, understandably so. We gained a lot of military experience. George Washington, the people that were under him, and all the colonists gained a lot of valuable military knowledge of the area and fighting, which came in handy from 1776 to 1783. And then we did not like this proclamation line of 1763. The British officers did not like Americans, and so that led to a lot of ill will, ill feelings as well. So Ohio from 1754 to 1803, a lot of events. So the battle, the French and Indian War was 1754, 1763. We had this line that nobody in America really liked. Revolutionary War begins. Not much happened in Ohio during the Revolutionary War. It was just kind of here. It was a afterthought. After it, though, things did happen. So in 1783, the Treaty of Paris, and that's when all these people started coming across that I talked about the last time. Riverboats, keel boats, millions flocking into the area, causing lots of issues. So the Treaty of Greenville and how it relates to Mercer County. How many sides does Mercer County have? Is it 4? Is it 5? Is it 6? Anybody know? I know it looks like a rectangle on the map, but there's actually 5 sides to Mercer County, and I'll get to that. So this treaty, the Greenville Treaty Line, went from Fort Recovery, and then it ran southeast, and then it ran up to the source of the Cuyahoga River north. So south and east of that line, settlers were supposed to stay, and north of that, native tribes could stay. Also, didn't last very long. So the treaty line, I've got the map of what that treaty line looked like. Mercer County, for those of you who don't know, has a little hook down here at the southeast corner. So it has 5 sides. And that hook, that angle, is left over from the treaty line of 1795. which I think is kind of fascinating. So there's only 2 counties in Ohio, if not in the United States, that have a line left over from a treaty from so long ago. So Mercer County was broken off from Darke County originally. Then when Auglaize County came along, they pushed the eastern border of Mercer County west 6 miles, but left the area below the Greenville Treaty Line. So that's why it has that little hook down there. So 231 years later, the treaty line still matters. We still use it in surveying and everything to this very day. I just think that's kind of fascinating. And I have to do a little plug. So in 2026, there's going to be a field of 2 million sunflowers planted. It'll be the largest map of America ever made outside, and everybody should come and look at it. It'll be August 6th through the 9th out here east of Rockford. Some of the key figures in the French and Indian War: George Washington, he was 21 years old when it started. William Pitt, who really moved the war along in favor of the British Prime Minister. The leading general of the French, Marquis de Montcalm. Pontiac, Wolfe, they did battle with each other at the Plains of Abraham, both died. And Thielen, it was a sort of an inspirational speaker. So what got left behind in all this? So France lost an empire literally all over the world, never really recovered. They did avenge their defeat by helping Americans during the Revolutionary War. Britain, they won the war, got a lot of debt, and they ended up losing the American colonies. The native nations lost nearly everything, and the Ohio country here became the epicenter of the American story in the day with the influx of people. So that's the end of that. But I have to point out that there, as you know, I like railroads. The largest steam locomotive in the world will be traveling through Ohio in June and July, and everybody should go see it. So it'll be coming from Fort Wayne through Payne, through Van Wert County on the way to Continental Ohio. It will not be stopping at those, but it will be coming through there. On the way back from the July 4th celebrations in Philadelphia, it will be stopping for viewing in Fostoria, Ohio at the Iron Triangle Park, and going back to Cheyenne, its home base, via a different route. So I encourage everybody to go up there, drink beer, and watch the locomotive. That's it for today. Anybody have any questions? Yes, I can talk about it a little bit more. Yeah. So we have an 80-acre field across from the schoolhouse. We're putting in, we're planting 2 million sunflowers. So the outline will all be in sunflowers. The cutout for America, every state, the Great Lakes, all major rivers, and the Transcontinental Railroad will be blank. And the idea was to make so your eye could see it from 30,000 feet. So the eye at 2020 can resolve so many feet that distance away. So we made all the paths at least 30 feet wide. So if you're flying over it in an airplane, looking out the window, you'll be able to see that, oh, that's America. We have 1776, we have 2026. Those numbers are 250 feet tall. And we have a ginormous Liberty Bell that'll be cut in there as well. I know that we have fireworks, red, white, and blue fireworks, as well as yellow and green ones on Saturday night, August the 8th. What else we plan to do? We're planning to do yoga on mornings and nights with no spiders. We're also getting a tethered hot air balloon so that you could go up and kind of look at it. I think that'll be kind of cool. What else are we trying to do? Oh, we got some bands coming from New Jersey and Toledo. I think Second Crossing is expected to be out there. Ohio is going to be all blank, so we can put up a big tent. think that's about it. Yeah, we're probably going to have about 50 vendors, trying to get food trucks to show up. We have one right now, hoping to get more. Uh, there'll be more to come. There'll be more to come. We should probably just rotate it through on the screen up there.
It's going to be a big party, right?
Yeah.
What's the date?
August 6th through the 9th. So Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It also happens to be the same weekend as the 127 garage sale. Pretty sure. But hot air balloon ride, I think it'd be cool. Anything else? All right.